Hello, everyone, and welcome to Shaper Sessions. My name is Jake,
And I'm Russ.
and today we're doing another dive into Greene and Greene.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. Last time we had Daryl on the show to celebrate the launch of his Shaper Masterclass, and we have another Shaper Masterclass coming out that we're going to tell you about shortly, but I don't want to spill the beans on yet.
yeah,
And in celebration with that, we're revisiting Greene and Greene and showing you another element that we haven't cut yet on this show. We're doing a ribbon pull.
yeah.
So we're excited for that.
Really fun addition, very organically shaped, and the kind of project that Origin really helps with in roughing out the basic steps, and then you come back in with some fantastic handwork, which you can learn the real technique from Dale Peart in his masterclass, but we're going to show you here today as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Along with all the nuts and bolts of using Origin
Yes.
for cutting this, and some really cool fixturing tricks that we learned along the way. So that stuff's applicable to basically any project that you're doing. The better your fixturing, the more repeatable your work, and the more time you're going to save. So you're going to learn a lot there.
Yep. Daryl is in the chat, we believe. So I want to welcome and thank Daryl for joining us. Please jump in at any point and correct either of us.
Yes, 100%.
As you are the master here. We were merely your students. So,
yes. And for everybody else who's in the chat, welcome to our live stream. We do this every other Thursday. Please ask as many questions as you can or just heckle us. We love every comment that we get.
Yep.
And we will be answering as many questions as we have time for at the end of the show. Ted's in the chat with us as well. He's going to be writing down all of the questions that we get that kind of are demoable, demonstratable, answerable live.
The real juicy ones.
He'll send those to us, and we'll answer them. We also do a giveaway.
Yep.
At the end of the show.
Yep. That's going to be to enter that. You got to answer our poll question, which is going to pop up halfway through. The poll question today is.
Let's get to that when we get to that.
Okay, we'll get to that when we get to that.
I would love to cut part of this ribbon pull just to get started as people kind of filter in, you know.
So let's hop over to that overhead, and I just want to show you what I got set up here. I'm working on Workstation with the shelf. And if you look right down here, I have a little Delrin pin, 1/4-inch Delrin pin that we just drilled in. And
Delrin's a fancy word for plastic.
Yeah, it's a hard, dense plastic. You could absolutely use a wood dowel. I had some Delrin laying around for some reason. And this part, we're going to get back to, but don't worry about this. For right now, we're just going to use some double-sided tape, press that up against the pin and up against the clamping face of Workstation. And let's scan it in.
Look at that. We've got two good registration faces on this, and we always talk about keeping your parts aligned with reliable, repeatable registration faces. We've got the three, actually, the clamping face of Workstation, the face of the shelf itself, and that Delrin plastic pin. So these parts, when you take them in and out, they're always going to end up in the same spot every time.
All right, let's go ahead and make a new grid. I have that engraving bit in backwards, so it gives me a nice 1/4-inch shank. Lower that all the way down. My first step is actually going to be to grid directly off of the Workstation face, because that is essentially the same thing as the back side of that material. Next, what we want to do is touch off on the face where that Delrin pin is. Nice and repeatable. Now we can go into our Greene and Greene cookbook, which you can find on Shaper Hub and has all kinds of fun details to spice up your furniture. And we are going to grab the ribbon pull right off the top.
That overhead view specifically.
Position on this, I'm just trying to center it on my block, more or less. That should be fine. All right. Let's start off with the groove. There is a nice groove down the middle of the handle, again, because the idea, the ethos behind Greene and Greene is to essentially erode every surface to make it look like it's truly weathered. But these are brand new pieces, so we are the weather.
I like that. We're the weather. Let's point out that that slot that we're cutting first. Do you have that piece handy somewhere?
I do.
Yeah, here we go.
So if we go in the overhead,
Yeah, right there down the middle.
right down the top. So for this, we're going to be using the coving bit, large bullnose coving bit on the 8mm shank. We're just going to do a real shallow cut, 1/16 of an inch deep. Not going to worry too much about actually telling Origin what size the bit is because I'm doing an online cut. And that online cut is right here. Make sure we're at 1/16 of an inch. And here we go.
Cool. So we're jumping right into this. We're going to take a step back and talk a little bit more, cover gridding one more time in a minute, but you're always welcome to watch the replay on this to keep following along. Now remember, as we do an online cut, you're going to want to start at one end and traverse to the other. Just keep that line somewhere inside that circle, and you're going to be all set. Origin's going to keep you exactly on the dotted line as you go across.
Real shallow, but it's going to help us kind of establish that shape and rough out some of the material. You might have noticed that spindle was really low.
Mm-hmm.
Because that bit is so big and because coving bits just in general build up a lot of friction, I kept that spindle speed down at like a 3, maybe even 2, and never hang out in one spot.
Good to know.
All right, coming back in with the 1/4 inch by 1 inch, just so we have a little extra length.
Yeah, this is what, a 13/16 thick part that we've got here?
Exactly.
So a little bit thicker than that 3/4 inch bit that we ship with Origin.
And we're going to do that outside in 42 passes. There we go. That feels good. All right, I'm going to work my way around this and just cut the outside profile out.
So we're graduating a little bit here from an online cut to an outside cut and using AutoPass on top of that. With this outside cut, Origin is going to cut to the outside of the template of this ribbon pull. And using AutoPass is going to do that in a couple of steps automatically, stepping down through the part till we get to the full thickness. You'll notice that as Jake's coming around here, Origin is just about to ramp. Here it is. And we're on to the next pass. So all Jake's doing here is keeping that dot inside the circle as he travels around, and you'll see this ribbon pull start to take shape. A couple of steps on this one. We've got the center groove cut out, we've got this outside cut out, and then after we talk about Greene and Greene a little bit, we're going to go ahead and come back to this and do some of these little steps that Daryl's designed on the sides of this part. Now the cool thing about this fixture is that you can take your part in and out of the fixture as many times as you want. It's always going to end up in exactly the same spot.
Wanted to illustrate that. And pause. Because I don't want to cut all the way through.
Oh, before we cut all the way through.
Occurred to me as
true. Once you cut the part loose, then you're out of luck.
Really just doing this to illustrate the fact that we can pop it out. We're going to be able to place it exactly back in. But
I mean, that's a start. Let's look at that. That's pretty cool.
yeah,
You know, we never really stop halfway.
I know.
You can kind of see some of the, the roughing marks on there. This is a good illustration of why we do roughing and finishing passes.
Oh yeah, because we're hogging through. It's pretty dense mahogany, and we're cruising. But I know that I have that roughing pass baked in there, so I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, that's fun. We really jumped right into that, and we're going to jump right out here for a minute because I want to pause to
Yeah.
talk about Greene and Greene.
Of course.
And then we can, continue and come back to all this because of this cool fixture that Jake put together. Pop quiz, Jake. What is Greene and Greene?
Greene and Greene refers to. Oh, I'm going to butcher this. It refers to two people that developed a style almost of their own, heavily inspired by their trips to Asia, and a lot of their furniture. You're going to see a lot of Asian motifs. I want to say they're brothers.
They are brothers.
They're definitely brothers.
It would be such a crazy coincidence if they weren't brothers.
I know,
wouldn't it? That's Greene and Greene in a nutshell. I mean, beautiful Japanese, Asian-inspired themes.
Yeah.
Some very feminine shapes, which is pretty cool. A lot of overbuilt architecture. They were architects.
Totally.
And they incorporated a lot of custom-built furniture into their architecture, which is where a lot of these elements come into play.
Yeah. You can see these same style elements in their furniture. And what I didn't know until we started talking to Daryl is that the iconic ebony pegs throughout the whole thing were often just for show. They didn't have any structural, like sometimes there was a screw hidden behind. Often they were just there because they look pretty.
But decoration is valuable too.
Absolutely is.
Isn't it? Yeah. Isn't that fun? Speaking of those pegs, I feel like we should show off the table that you built as kind of an example of this style. So I'm going to grab that.
Yeah, we built this table many years ago before we had been in conversation with Daryl, but obviously heavily inspired by his work. And boy, did I learn a lot.
There, how about that?
Perfect.
Oh, yeah, beautiful.
Nice lighting, Goose.
There's those pegs right there.
So looking back at this, you know what I wish I would have added?
What?
Cloud lifts.
Yeah,
That
I
would have
could
really...
see maybe some on the sides here or in the stretchers over there.
Yeah. Anyways.
So, cool table. All of the elements to build something like this, we have in a Shaper Hub project from Daryl, and you can learn in this masterclass that he put together. Let's pull those up. All right. First thing over here, Shaper Hub. This is where we have all different kinds of projects that you can build with Origin and elements of projects that you can incorporate into your own work. So this is the Greene and Greene cookbook from Daryl Peart, and you can see some really cool photos of what we've got going here. We've got an example of a cloud lift here, for example, this little raised part in the stretcher. Some really cool box joints that you could do just on Origin with our box joint calculator. The ribbon pull over here on the lower left, and a tsuba inlay, which is the one that we did in the last show when we actually had Daryl on air with us. So we'll show that off in a second here. To check this out, all you need to do is go to hub.shapertools.com. Ted's got a link for this in the chat. Even if you don't own Origin, just pop your email address in and you'll have access to all these files. These are SVG files, which you can use on a whole bunch of different tools, and some instructions in here that are going to be really valuable to you. Speaking of instructions, we also have Daryl's masterclass, which you should check out. That's over here at shapertools.com/masterclass. And you can see we've got a whole bunch of these from many different, we might be up to 10 at this point, at least 8 different instructors. Daryl here right at the top, the Art of Greene and Greene Furniture. So he shows you his techniques for making all of these things. And we've got a little sneak peek about the thing that we're going to talk about at the break here. There might be a new one.
Excellent. I'll show off that tsuba that we did just as a reminder on the overhead. I think this is really cool. The shape of this is inspired by the hilt of a katana.
It's a beautiful shape. I think it looks like a flower.
Daryl's been using it for cable pass-throughs in some of his desks, and again, just a really beautiful pop of. We chose to use white oak, but you would probably used ebony, and it's just so softened on the corners and just feels just so inviting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you can make this any size you want with the scale feature on Origin. We're going to show you how to scale this ribbon pull to be any length that you want it to be also. Okay, that's everything that I wanted to talk about. I think we can get back to cutting.
All right.
Sorry, I had to interrupt there.
That's all right. This part's free, but I'm just going to go ahead and do exactly as I did before. Press firmly up against that pin, firmly up against the clamping face. Press that back down.
Nice.
And I am very confident that's exactly where I started. It was a good thing we paused because I don't want to cut this part all the way out yet because I have some pocketing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, the general rule of thumb is it's always best to do kind of your more aggressive cuts before you cut the whole piece free, just in case.
So you have maximum tape.
Maximum adhesion, exactly. This is a pretty big part. I'm not worried about it going anywhere, but it's a good thing to keep in practice. All right. A quick C-touch. And we're going to do some pocketing. So this first one's just down to 0.2. I'll come over here, do the same thing, and switch these to inside cuts as well on each time.
Mm-hmm. Great.
All right.
You notice Jake is using the encoded depth for this file. Really cool thing about Origin lately is that in our last or even maybe 2 software releases ago, we added this feature, encoded depths, where you can just look inside a file and see how deep you're supposed to cut. A lot of our Shaper Hub projects now have this built in. Studio has this functionality so that you can plan your depth of cut in Shaper Studio, our simplified digital design tool for craftspeople. See that in a preview in Studio and then go right over to Origin in your workshop and know how deep to cut your part. And it's really handy for when you're working on a project like this. You don't want to have to go back and forth to your instructions or to the computer to see how deep Daryl would recommend you cut this stuff. Especially handy for projects of much greater complexity than this. So we've done a little sneak peek of Phil Morley's wall-hanging record cabinet on the last 2 shows, and that project is finally going to be released, I think, this Saturday. So stay tuned for that. That's a project that's got a lot of encoded depths to pay attention to, a lot of really complex cuts. I think we're going to walk through it on an upcoming show here soon. We did the tenon portion 2 weeks ago, but there's a lot of template routing and things like that to do. Cool door glue-up fixture to build, and so you're going to want to pay attention to the encoded depths for that. If you haven't noticed encoded depths on your Origin, make sure you connect it to Wi-Fi. If it's not on the latest software, you'll get a little blue update icon on the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Just tap that icon and it's going to automatically update you to the latest. Really nothing should change other than that you get a couple extra features. We're always improving things about Origin, so the last couple of features have been really great. We've got encoded depths. I mean, if you go way back, this includes new things, new at the time things, like our on-tool text or box joint generator. So we always recommend keeping your tool connected to Wi-Fi so that when one of those updates comes through, you are the first to get it. Jake's coming in now and doing that second depth pass pocket on the outside step of these ribbon pulls. So it's got that top step, middle step, a bottom step, and then a cut all the way through. For anyone who's new to watching sessions, we try to explain the Origin stuff as we go. Pocketing is the mode where Origin works the most like a plunge router. So in the middle of that pocket, it's actually going to keep the spindle locked in the center until you get to the edge of that crosshatched area. Then when you reach the edge of that crosshatch area, that's when the auto correction kicks in. And now, what's this, Jake? You're going back to auto pass? And this is really cool because you're going to resume right where you left off, right? So cool thing about auto pass, even if you pause it, you can always go back to where you were. That's where that dot pops up, so Jake does not have to start this over again. The only reason that that wouldn't happen, one thing to keep in mind when you're using AutoPass is make sure you clear your cut history between every cut. So since Jake started this with fresh cut history, he's got that reminder of where he paused. And since we popped it back in to this fixture, exactly where it was, and since we had our cut history cleared, Jake's able to go right back to where he was and finish cutting this out. So that was the last roughing pass, and now I've just got one finishing pass here all the way around. You know, I don't think we even meant to demonstrate that little auto pass nugget, did we, Jake? But it's fun when these things pop up. So the difference between the roughing and the finishing pass here, you saw when we were doing the roughing pass, we were taking that cut at a full slot width at about 1 router bit's diameter, and that's pushing the router a little bit. Not the hardest that we've pushed it, but it's pushing it. And so it's normal to get a little bit of chatteriness in there, just like as if you were trying to do this cut with a plunge router. With that finishing pass, we're taking a much lighter cut, coming in there, just taking off a little skim pass of about 0.03, 0.04 inches. And it's a much lighter load, much easier to get that perfect result.
Excellent.
Cool. Yeah, we didn't mean to do that at all, did we?
I saw the opportunity.
Ah, did you? Nice. Wow, that's fun.
There it is.
Cool. That's one ribbon pull. And we took a big old break in the middle of that, too. You could really crank those out. Beautiful. Unshaped, by the way. Roughed out.
Yep.
But not shaped. And we have a second cut to do on that also, I guess. Should we go ahead and do that first? That second cut? Before the break? I think we should.
Sure.
Because we had talked about then coming back and doing one that, at a different scale.
Yes.
Right? So I want to make sure we leave ourselves plenty of time.
All right. So, if we hop into overhead for me, please. I have my part here.
This is the coolest thing, everybody.
Quick note, it is not square. It is actually a little thinner here than it is at the ends. It's just subtle enough when you notice it if you're looking for it.
That's sterile for you.
Exactly. So my point of that is when you rest it against the workstation, you notice it touches here and here, but not here. That's okay. Let's go ahead and lower my fence. Lower my shelf, rather. Level it out.
And what you're doing here is just setting that height, right?
Exactly.
Now, this is very important.
We are cutting the groove on the side facing the actual drawer face.
Let's show that on the actual one, because I'm having a hard time keeping track. There we go. Nice.
There it is. Overhead, please. There it is. So there's our actual pull, or place to grab. We're just going to do that on both sides of this.
And this is what's so cool about this fixture, is that pin is in the right place, that we can reuse the same grid, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Almost.
Okay.
The
we might need to make a second grid, but it's repeatable in the same way. At least you can use it.
Yeah.
Over and over.
I'm going to set up 2 workspaces,
okay.
But I have this wedge block comes in here. As I drive it in, it's going to further pull it into this pin. Versus if I had it the other way, it would push it away.
Oh yeah, show that.
And I'm not trying to go crazy.
Tapping right into the pin.
Yeah.
Another pro tip. Yeah, I guess you wouldn't want both of these on the same workspace. You would want a new scan for this so that you can see what's going on.
I'm going to set up a new one. It's also, I want to be able to probe off the front face of this for this one.
Okay.
I'm just using the workstation T-handle as a hammer. It's kind of perfect.
When everything's a nail, every tool's a hammer.
Every tool's a hammer.
Like that.
All right, let's bring it in. Take the time to switch to our probe. When you're doing fixturing, you're doing repetitive stuff, if you're cutting 5, 10 of these poles, take the extra second to use the probe.
Yeah.
So you're setting it up once.
You're only gridding once. Do it the right way.
Exactly. Start with a fresh scan. and hop into grid. Same thing. Oh, not same thing, sorry. For this one, we're actually going to go up against our material. 1, 2, and on this farthest edge, it's got a radius to it, so it's going to look a little deceiving, but we are touching the farthest left portion of that pole. And go ahead and import the second file, and this is the reason I wanted to do bottom left, because the custom anchor point of this file is located on the bottom left.
There we go.
Boom.
Quick change to a 1/4 inch router bit, right?
Exactly. Yeah, just going back to that same bit I was using before. Z-touch. And in fact, I'm going to do that again. I'm going to Z-touch off the surface of workstation because I just reminded myself that this part actually bows.
Has that big old dip in it.
Bows in the middle, exactly. So Z-touch right off the top.
There we go.
There it is. I am going to change this to a pocket. And we're going to 0.1875. Sweet. Here we go.
Great. Now the cool thing about a fixture like this is you don't need any tape. This is all just held in with that plastic pin, the wedge, and friction. And since this is a double-sided part, even if you're doing just one of these, it's worth it to make a fixture like this because we're going to do one side. Jake's going to cut this all out, and then you're going to see how easy it is to just flip this over and cut the other side. Not many chests of drawers with just one pole, maybe a nightstand, but get some ambitious projects under your belt and cut a big old wardrobe with these. It'd be a lot of fun. You get 8 or 10 ribbon pulls in there. Switching from the pocket cut to the inside cut now. This is going to follow along that line. Daryl's got this designed so that it tapers really nicely into that mahogany pull. Straight line across the back, and then it's going to taper out really smoothly as well. There we go. Check that out on overhead cam.
Beautiful.
Pretty good.
All right, you ready for the next one?
Let's do it.
Just flip.
Here, let's get overhead again. There we go. Just flip. And wedge. Just flip and wedge.
Flip and wedge. All right. Back to that.
Just switch back to that pocketing cut, and you're off to the races. Again, you can see this pocketing action here where Origin works just like a plunge router, keeping that spindle locked inside the crosshatched area. Whereas when Jake reaches the boundary of that corrective range kicks in and prevents him from overcutting. Now, let's see what happens if you go outside the circle, Jake. Whoops. Origin retracts automatically and keeps you from messing up your work. It's the whole point of the thing, or at least half the point of the thing. So we encourage everybody who's new to this to do that on purpose a couple of times, try to make some mistakes, get a feel for it, and hopefully realize that it's not as intimidating as it looks, because the whole point of this is to save your projects, not make you too anxious about them. Coming in again on that inside cut. You do want to develop some sense of smoothness here. Smoothness is equivalent to accuracy and precision with origin. You can be anywhere in that circle as long as you keep it smooth. That's the most important thing. And there we go.
Boom.
That's a ribbon pull. You can see how fast it would be to crank a bunch of those out. Cool. I love that.
I know. Awesome.
All right.
Set that to the side.
Ready to take a little break?
Let's take a break.
Okay, little mid-show break. First off, that giveaway poll question. The poll question today, we've been talking about masterclasses. We've asked everybody who they want to see in a masterclass before. Today I'm going to switch it up a little bit. What topic do you want us to cover in our next masterclass? So the poll question for today, what topic do you want us to cover in our next masterclass? Answer that in the pop-up, and you'll be entered to win the giveaway. Sure. Great. That's going to be up for a little while. I mentioned Phil Morley's wall-hanging record cabinet.
Yeah, we got to show that off.
We've been bringing it onto the set the last couple times. I just want to show you guys some pictures today because we're going to have these on Saturday. So check this out. Is this beautiful or what? This is what this thing's going to look like. And this gives you a little sense of scale with the record player on there. Look at that detail. Beautiful. Jake turned a knob for this one. Really cool edge detail on the top. Just absolutely stunning. So stay tuned for this on Sunday, or not Sunday, Saturday, that is. Stay tuned for this on Saturday. Those project plans are going to be released. And I wanted to hop back to this masterclass page because, you know, I realized I didn't even click through to show you Daryl's page. So if you aren't registered for these, all you're going to need to do is just pop in your email address and you'll get access to this whole thing along with all of the other masterclasses. We just need to send you a link or something. But masterclass with Daryl Pierce. So check this out. The Art of Greene and Greene Furniture. Meet Daryl, obviously. How could you not? And then some lessons in here. So the history of Greene and Greene, ebony pegs, ebony splines, cloud lifts, ribbon pulls, hand shaping, which we're kind of covering today, and the Tsuba inlay. Last but not least, finishing. So this is like an hour plus, maybe an hour and a half of material. At least an hour of material in here, which is just absolutely phenomenal. And now's the time to click back and look at the new masterclass that's coming out. I mean, it's out today because we're on the real live webpage from Sayosi Design. These women make just absolutely incredible furniture. And so some of the topics that you'll see in here, furniture design, working with slabs, turning table legs. They mortise their table legs with origin, and more, inlays and engravings, glue ups, and finishing. Definitely check this out. Same deal. I mean, if you signed up for masterclasses to see Daryl's, you already have access to all this. If you haven't signed up for our masterclasses yet, all you need to do is pop in your email address, and you're going to have access to this just wealth of knowledge. And we've got Goose ready to show the Meet Your Instructor clip for this. So I think we should pull that up and give that a play.
Let's do it. We will do it. There.
Audie likes to say, it doesn't have to be new, it just has to be you. That's what we encourage all of our students to do when they're designing. You don't have to reinvent the table.
We designed a 32-inch round, multi-tiered shelving unit. So it's a little bit out of the ordinary. It is using concepts that we've done a lot in the past, but it's kind of combining them in a way that we've never applied before. Kind of designed based on feeling inspired by not only the space and the function we needed, but also the material that was at our fingertips. So another thing to consider if you have an entire slab that you're working with is how to maximize the material. So I'll show you what I know and I'll show you what I do, and then maybe you can find your own way.
A big part of being a designer is developing your own aesthetic, and our spin on it is unique to us. because it involves our hands, our egos, and our particular taste.
Yeah, and don't get too stuck on how you're going to do it. Just do it.
Be new. It just has to be you.
Yeah, so make sure you check that out. And we're hoping to have Audie and Ivy on soon from COC. So look forward to that.
Excellent. We also have a shop tour to show you. This week is from George. Thanks for saying that, George. I think we can just roll right into that.
I think we can just roll right into that. There we go.
This is the shop tour for George Haas. I live about 90 miles above New York City, next to where the original Woodstock site was. The shop is 24 by 32 with a 10-foot high ceiling and a concrete floor. Spent quite a bit of time doing some planning to get what I wanted here. I have done most of the work in here, including all the concrete work, the sheetrock, and so on. One of the main features that I like about the shop is the dust collection system. Have an Oneida main dust collector and a small jet collector to do the submicron stuff. But the feature that makes it work so well is when you turn a machine on, that slide gate opens up, and for each machine, it sucks all the sawdust, chips, and so on into that cyclone to a 55-gallon drum, and then you take the stuff out and throw it away when you're done. Shop started to be built here in 2020, but it's taken a couple of years to get it the way I want it. It takes a while to get things like this rolling cabinet built so that you've got places to put screws and dowels and so on. Place to keep the battery-powered equipment, more clamps. Even have an anvil here, which is, believe it or not, quite handy. There's a 14-inch Laguna bandsaw. I've got a 15-inch Powermatic planer, an 8-inch Powermatic joiner, a 10-inch saw stop, various safety pieces that I used. There is a woodpecker's mortising jig, a Laguna 1938 sander, a Jessam router table, a pair of jet oscillating spindle sander and a belt sander, and of course, some Shaper Origins. There is a pair of these here. Here's a toolbox that was built to hold some of the parts and pieces that you use every day. And this table that this thing sits on is adjustable for big pieces. This side of it can be adjusted up and down 18 inches. And with these jacks here, this part of it can be moved up and down about 8 inches. So you can work on big, heavy pieces like this piece of 3-inch maple that's going to be part of a table that's on this workbench here. Also have a small bandsaw for cutting up junk parts and pieces that you don't need that big guy for, more clamps, a Festool cutoff saw, more clamps, no such a thing as too many clamps in a shop, drill press, work area, and another storage and layout area where I do glue ups and keep parts and pieces here. This stuff has all been done with Origin. When you're done with it, you put it back. That way you can find it the next time. Works very well. And I've got a big roll-around table here that I use for clamping up things and general woodworking stuff. That's the shop tour.
Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Love a well-organized shop.
So cool.
If you'd like to send a shop tour, send that to sessions@shapertools.com. Let's roll into our next demo.
Do we mention the trade-in?
We didn't. We should mention that. Okay. Yeah, this is new. So this is a good one to keep our heads wrapped around. Let me pull this up here.
Yeah, it's just too cool of an opportunity not to show.
Shapertools.com. Perfect. Here we go. Check this out. Pull this up. Last thing here. Okay, this is new and we love it, so we have to mention it. New Origin trade-in program. Basically, the deal is we're going all in on sustainability this year. We want people to feel like if their Origin has been used or is at the end of their life, they have a responsible outlet for it so that they could upgrade to a Gen 2 or just replace their Origin. We've got 3 pricing tiers here. Used but loved, $900. Loved but worn, $700. Ready to recycle, absolutely unserviceable. We will still give you $500 for your Gen 1 Shaper Origin. And we will responsibly recycle it. So we're really proud of that.
Yeah.
Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, no problem. And now we can go into it.
Okay.
All right.
Perfect. Demo number 2 today is going to be cutting another one of these just at a different scale. So we're going to use the on-tool scale function to scale this down, let's say to 75%. Or so. Or, when we get around there, I don't know what the numbers work out to on this, but we could come up with a number when we get to that. But there's a couple different ways to do it with the on-tool calculator.
All right. So I'm going to go into workspaces and just hop back into that previous workspace.
Cool thing about
set it up.
this, you can keep that grid. We can just replace the design on it.
Exactly. I'm going to remove that old design, clear my cut history, and import it fresh. All right, let's see how this looks. Scale. And we are just going to do the width.
Yep, so we want to make sure that's unlinked. Yep.
Yeah, decouple those. All right, 75%.
Yeah, I would do that
Times
0.75 and see what the number comes out to.
Nice.
Does that look? Does that look cool?
Yeah.
Cool.
About 7 1/4.
Great.
So I'm just going to drop that there. And everything looks good.
Yeah, nice. We could go ahead and pocket that stuff, then do that line cut and hit the outside.
Let's do it. Let me do the line cut first.
Okay. Don't let me mess up your groove.
Get it?
It's literally a groove. This is the coving bit that we stock at shapertools.com. You could use a lot of different profile bits for this, but we like the coving bit. As long as you get a little bit of a shallow cut in there, you're going to be happy. We're going to show you guys shaping. Brief primer on shaping after we cut through this.
All right.
Safety first.
Safety first. Super quick.
Mm-hmm.
This mahogany is really interesting to work with.
Why's that?
It feels like it has grain that goes 2 different directions right next to each other.
Huh. Okay.
It's wild.
Interesting.
Not talking any trash on mahogany. I love it. I just really love sapele.
I'm a maple man myself.
All right, Z-touch again. I'd say the downside of not changing your bit size when going back and forth between the coving bit is it doesn't give you that mental or that actual check of, hey, you need a Z-touch, so you have to do it. You have to remember to do it for yourself.
You have to do it with your brain.
Yeah. All right, that first depth is 0.2. I'm just going to buzz through this.
Nice. I'm going to let you rock and roll on this. All right, so these are those pocketing cuts. One thing to keep in mind when you're doing something like scaling is that it is going to shrink the size of these steps proportionately. And so if you were to make this, half as wide or a quarter as wide instead of 3/4 as wide, you might make these steps so narrow as for that pocket to actually disappear. The reason for that is because the pocket is kind of calculated with a built-in roughing offset that gives it a little bit of breathing room between it and the edge of the template. You'll see that's why Jake is doing these pocketing cuts first and then coming back and doing that inside cut to clean up right to the edge of that template. That's because this pocket has that built-in roughing offset already applied. Even if it doesn't look like there's any roughing offset applied on Jake's screen, his global offset is still set to 0. So, as these pockets shrink with scale, you might lose the pocket before you lose the inside cut. Now remember, that's because Origin will not display any cut that your router bit doesn't fit into. This is one of our most frequently asked questions is, why doesn't my cutting path show up? Well, usually it's because your router bit is too big to fit into the cut path. So what we recommend there is playing with the offsets a little bit to try to find an offset that enlarges the cutting path enough for your router bit to fit in there, or using a smaller router bit to reach inside the smaller cutting path. But since we're only cutting this at 75%, it didn't actually change these pockets that much. We're still able to get in there with that 1/4 inch bit just fine. All right, doing those last couple inside cuts. Or maybe this is the pocket first. Pocketing, and now that inside cut. There we go. You'll see that circle turn green as Jake approaches these corners. Jake's a big fan of using auto mode in the corners, so that circle's turning green when he presses the green button on Origin's right handle. And that means that Origin is going to continue moving at its auto speed on its own, even while Jake is holding Origin still. That spindle is going to go ahead and continue to advance up to the edge of the corrective range. No further than the edge of the corrective range, but up to it. And that can help you move around corners smoothly. It's kind of a pro move. Definitely get a feel for it on some scrap before you try it out on your project, but we really like doing this for tight corners, especially like the ones that he was just cutting there. And now we're back to cutting the outside of this part. Again, using auto pass to cruise around through here. I think Jake's on the second of 4 or 5 passes. The cool thing about this is you don't have to really remember where you're at. You can take a pause at any time, or, even make a mistake and get a retraction at any time and come right back to where you left off. And it steps down pass by pass for you without you having to pause and punch in the numbers or do any calculations or potentially make any mistakes. So that's a really handy feature there. All right, coming up on that finishing pass now. And like we showed you earlier, the difference between the roughing and the finishing pass, just that the roughing pass is taking much more material at any given time. Jake's got to be a little rougher with the router, and so you're going to get a little less of fine results. That's why we always come back with a finishing pass to get you the best results possible when, the router's smoother to handle, when you're pushing against less load, just like any router.
That's awesome.
Pretty cool.
I love that we did
Let's
that.
show those side by side.
That overhead. There you go.
Nice.
So this might be, if we're doing a chest of drawers, we have a wide single drawer Or maybe we have 2 handles or 2 drawers with each smaller handles. I think that's so cool.
Tasteful. Yeah. I love that.
Sweet. So, in the interest of time, should we move on to shaping?
Yeah, I mean, that was all that we wanted to show with cutting anyway. Was there anything else?
For doing that same, for doing the actual undercut for your fingers,
Oh, the undercut.
you're going to just scale it the exact same way. You're
That's why I like using those percents, yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely, I like that technique.
So you could even scale kind of a whole project by percents if you really wanted to.
Totally.
Quarters and tenons, scale them by percents.
That's really nice.
Yeah,
I
it's
like
very
that.
nice. Yeah, we've got a little primer on shaping. You should definitely watch Daryl's thing. I'm not telling you to log off. You should stay and watch us. But after you watch us, you should go watch Daryl's thing because he's the master. Yeah, and we got, what do we have here set up, Jake?
This is a pattern maker's vise. Really good for clamping odd shaped things. But I went ahead and tightened the vise, or tightened the jaws down so they don't rotate. Normally they rotate.
Yeah, they do rotate.
Just because I'm going to be able to hold it right on its edge
Big shout out to Goose for the camera work.
like that. Oh,
here.
that's great.
Yeah, holy smokes.
So let's see. Let's do that to start us off. Okay. Couple tools of the trade. Got a very coarse curved rifler. And this is going to do the bulk of our shaping on these corners. And really with this top, we're just going to be using coarse sandpaper to essentially blend this groove out all the way to the end. We're not looking for any sharp corners. The only sharp corners I suppose we should see are right on the inside of these steps. But all of this is going to get rounded out, especially on those 3-point corners. If this was sitting out in a seaside village for hundreds of years,
If it was tumbling in the ocean, even.
if it was tumbling in the ocean, that would be the first to go. So kind of move in the motion where any high spot is going to get taken down, eroded. Keep that word in mind, eroded.
Nice. Let's do some eroding.
Let's do some eroding. This thing is amazing at taking off material, and that curve is really helping us stay with the idea of just rounding everything down.
Mm-hmm. I notice you're working with the grain on this.
Trying my best, but you know, after
Not
watching
always possible, but
after watching a lot of Daryl videos, he's not afraid to go cross grain. With a coarse file like this going against the grain is going to feel pretty awful, but cross grain, no problem. Really going to work our way through the grits here.
that thing really just removes material. That's incredible.
I know. It's a mindset, I found. Shaping, because it always hurts me to see like the deep grooves in the wood, because, you know, you just want it to be perfect. But we will get to perfection. We got to work our way through the coarseness. Another great tool to help you kind of get up into these corners is a half round file. So that allows you to get right up in there without messing with the sidewall too much of the step.
And this is a little bit finer than that rasp also, so it's going to start taking out some of those deep cuts.
Yeah, exactly. I will say, I love a file. Sometimes a rasp feels like too much, but once we get to the file stage, that's where it just makes me so happy. It's that little zip sound.
Zoop.
Zip.
Fun fact about rasps and files is that they only cut on the push. It's really obvious to see with rasps, but files are the same way. They're kind of like a saw. They only cut one direction. So
Totally.
you're not doing much by dragging the file over your material backwards. A little more tasteful to just push.
Another detail that we need to establish is right up here kind of in the groove here. Imagine this groove is going to continue running down through the steps, but we need to establish that. So get it going. And work it all the way over. You can hear that end grain getting a little chunky. On these shorter sections, you can get it started a little bit with just the top of that. You can also use it in that direction. Just the tip of the rifler. Again, working our way through.
Nice. Yeah, let's step it up. What's next?
I guess these are more for finishing, but these detail sanding sticks, they usually come in a pack of multiple, and they have a couple different grits. You got a heavier grit and a finer grit. This is what's going to really be helpful to come in and level out any of those areas. Any of those flat areas.
Because those were the bottoms of the pocket with Origin, and so you have a little bit of potential for a little cusp in there.
Yeah.
It helps you smooth that out. Yeah, that little tongue on that sanding stick. And we've got these narrow ones. We also have the wide one sitting over on the table too.
Really nice. Cool. And then what it really comes down to, just some hand sandpaper. Working our way through the grits. I'm using sanding discs because it's what we got. But sheet sandpaper works great too.
And you got to watch Daryl's videos for his technique on this. He's like a manual flap sander in a way.
Yeah.
You're doing your best to emulate, I can tell, with the thumb action.
Totally. And getting into that groove.
Watch your shoulder there.
Sorry.
Heads up. There you go.
But really it just comes back to backing that sandpaper up with your thumb and whacking it.
I can't quite see that corner from here, but what do you think about that?
I've only been focused on this corner, and
Pretty good?
I'd say I'm quite happy with it.
Yeah, nice.
Definitely.
Let's show that in comparison to the big finished one. Just to show where you're going with this. We're not going to make you watch us sand this whole thing.
Totally.
But we're probably going to be here for another hour sanding this whole thing for fun.
Yeah, exactly.
After the show.
Definitely.
Yeah, when's your chest of drawers going to be done, Jake?
I have a question for Daryl, since we have him in here. How would you, and ideally, attach this to your drawer face? Like, what's your method?
Oh,
I have
dude.
I have a couple ideas.
You just totally preempted a question from the
Oh, I
audience
did.
here. Yeah, you didn't even know.
Okay.
I've been reading them as they come in.
Okay.
That's
very
awesome.
Curious what that answer is going to be.
Well, this is why you all have to watch live if you're watching this later on YouTube on demand, because we're about to roll into our live Q&A segment. So if you're watching this after the fact, make sure you join us live next time. If you're here, thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned.
Thanks, everyone.